Coaches, let me read you the top line from the game plan last week of Coach Alan Keane in the European Championships against Croatia. Breathe life and belief into the players. But how do you do that under all that pressure, scrutiny, and judgment from the European Championships? If you've ever wanted to know what is it actually like to be a national team coach and how do you do it really well, this episode's for you. It's number 8 of the Don't Tell Me, Show Me podcast. Okay, we got the band back together. We got Mark and Alan with me. Alan, we've been promising the listeners an episode with you. We try to do it mid-tournament, but obviously schedules change on a daily basis there, so we didn't manage that. But here we are, just post-tournament. You've only been back a few days, so this is a chance to maybe take a deeper dive. This episode will be a bit longer than we usually do. Mark and I will lob some questions at you, and you get a chance to just share like some insights. We're really interested in the details, like what's it like to actually be in Armenia, of all places. I take it you've probably never been there, in the European Championships. And so we really want to kind of lift the lid on what it's like to be a national team coach and that kind of setting. So kick us off. Just tell us, like, what was the feeling like going into the tournament? Like, what was your preparation? What were the expectations of players and staff, do you think, heading into that tournament?
Yeah, it's always, you're always heading into the unknown, Simon. This would have been my potentially 14th European Championship. And even for myself as a returner year after year, you're heading into the unknown because you don't know yourself as well as you think you do or you'd like to, because, how you perform is dependent on the opposition. Like, so you can have all the feelings and thoughts about we could do this, we could do that. And, then as the old Mike Tyson saying, you get punched in the nose and you didn't prepare for that. So, it's you go in there with a positive look for sure, but also you got to go in there with a perspective of close to reality that, we've got to prepare for the unknown and we can only be the best version of ourselves. So as much as we scout these other teams in opposition that we play for, as I've gone through the years and become more experienced, we've spent more time scouting ourselves. Like, what's the best version of us and how close can we get to that? And then, right, we need to know a bit about the opposition and prepare for certain things. But a lot of the focus, Simon, going into this championship was about how can we maximize everything we've got as a group and in each individual within the group. So we went in there with excitement and hope as always, but clarity on are we close to achieving our potential at the right time.
And was it a smooth prep, or did you have some curveballs before you left?
Until you sit in the head coach's seat, it's never smooth. It gets even more bumpier when you do sit in the head coaching seat. But they come in different ways, so it's never smooth because you don't know what's around the corner. Injuries, sickness. We had staff that got really ill. Our team manager ended up in hospital in the preparation in Turkey. She ended up in hospital for 2 nights on a drip. So now we're one very important team member down during the preparation period. We then continued on to Armenia for the 3 days before our first game, and one of our assistant coaches was ill for 2 days. He was bedbound for 2.5 days, basically. So you can't prepare for those things. You can prepare, but you can't prepare exactly for how they will play out or when they will play out. So it's never smooth, and there's 2 examples of it not being smooth or not knowing what's coming around the corner. But going into it, I think we did a very good job, Simon, of being adaptable and talking about the blind spots that could be and trying to prepare for scenarios that could show up. And then when they do show up, you hope that you've done as much as you can to deal with it and endure it and carry on.
Mark, that sounds like one of those what-if scenarios you talk about sometimes.
Well, I mean, the biggest what-if is be prepared for the unexpected, isn't it? It's like when you prepare forces for battle, is you can get really good at scanning, making decisions live, interacting live, adapting live, and that's preparing you for the unknown. And you can put a lot of energy into that, which is obviously the challenge phase we spoke about before. I think the other thing, Alan, that I think so important for some people, I know but some people don't, is when you're at any level, but clearly you're not England football level of finances, but any team that's going abroad, there's a bit of a gamble on what's the quality of the food and even the taste that's going to be like when you turn up for breakfast. How's the room temperature going to be so athletes can sleep So all of a sudden you've got an athlete who's going, I haven't slept because it's a firmer mattress. They come down, that they haven't got the food they normally like. Okay, so how do we now find a shop that can get more protein in? So all these little things of, the transport takes longer than we thought to get to the venue. Well, actually, the court time we've got, actually, someone's running a bit late. We've now got 15 minutes less of court time for our practice period. All these things are huge as well in getting athletes go, just be ready. What's the best I can do right now? Well, that, back to that excellence point. I think that's so important.
And touching off that, Mark, you want to give you a real life example. For us was our S&C. He would every place we went to, he would Google research shops nearby, and it was literally to get peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for post practice, post game. And like literally, he'd be in the change room after every practice, every game, and you'd always see Murray in the corner, and he's just doing this. He's basically buttering 48 slices of bread with peanut butter and jelly. Just to refuel, start the recovery process immediately when we finish practice. So part of the preparation was he was mapping all that out, like physically, literally mapping it out. Where's the closest shop I can get this stuff from? Because when you do go to these different countries, you don't know where you're going to end up in terms of location until you get there.
So you're coaching under 20s, so you're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-olds, young people. Inevitably, they've got some expectations or dreams. Do they go to the European Championships dreaming they're going to average 25 a game and get scouted? How do you deal with their expectations? How do you keep them focused on behaviors rather than dreams and goals and outcomes?
The first thing we do, Simon, is talk about it. We have the conversation about what you've just said. What's their dreams? What's their desires? What's their expectations of what we're going into? And we don't wait till we get to Armenia. We don't wait till we get to Turkey for that. That's day one of camp. That's day 2 of training camp. That's day 3. That's the first camp. We have conversations about their expectations. And then with the experience we have as staff, having been there and done it before, we share with them what the realities are. And there's different ways to do it. And what I discussed with you one time is we introduced them to the change curve. And the dip and that cycle of like you're going into something with loads of optimism that you're going to average 25, that you're going to be scouted by NBA, because there's NBA scouts sitting in the stands. There's agents coming to the hotels asking the coaches for conversations. The players see those conversations happening in the lobby. And of course, the players are wondering, is it about them? So they have all these expectations and hopes and dreams. But actually, the reality can be very different. So we took them through a change cycle, which was informing them that, or helping them to understand that what you're going into, you will have hope, dreams, desires, you will be optimistic, but you don't really have all the information you need in order to be clear what's coming. Maybe you don't know if you're going to get injured. You don't know if you're not going to play well. You don't know if you're going to get food poisoning. You don't know, like Mark said, if the mattress is uncomfortable and you're sleeping 4 hours instead of the prescribed 9 hours. And that was a real life example. We had a player who just couldn't sleep. He really struggled sharing a room. He really struggled in the hotels we were in. And when we got the wellness scores every morning, he had slept an average of 4.5 hours. So we were finding different ways to help him with meditation, mindfulness. We were trying to work with him in these different ways, trying to find moments in the day where we would encourage him to take a nap. So they go into this with little information as to what it's going to feel like, look like. And they're not the main player anymore because there's 12 guys who are the main players on their club teams, school teams, universities in the States. They come to us. And actually, the main player is the average. Like you're just fitting into an average kind of scale. Everyone's the main guy. And then after a period of time, we do the preparation tournaments in Turkey. We do the preparation tournaments in Hungary. And you have all these challenges that come and they start to gather a bit more information as to what the reality of this is like. And in some guys, they become quite pessimistic about it and they get down. And they start to, different things creep into them, such as doubt, lack of confidence, frustration. Maybe they start hiding from the reality, so their behavior shifts and changes, and they find themselves in what we call the dip. And that's that valley of despair moment where you're going, I don't know if I want to do this, or you start to have some resentment towards the coaches or your teammates or the environment you're in. You start to make up excuses. So before we arrive to that point, Simon, I share this change cycle with them, and I share with them what the journey could look like. Because with that information, now we can start to prepare for it. It's a bit like scouting an opposition. we can prepare the right tactics once we know what's coming down the line from that opposition. Well, this is no different. We take that concept and we put it into the player's journey that they're going to go through from what they're used to in their domestic environment to what they're expecting to what the reality is. So joining the dots there around what reality could be. And I guess as far as a concept goes, you're back to acceptance. How can we help them to accept what's happening is happening and then approach it with a plan of action? And pursue their best version of themselves in this environment, because the best version of themselves in this environment very often is different to their best selves in their domestic environments. Just because everything's different, the context is different, challenge is different. So then we continue along that cycle, and we start to develop more information about this experience, and we talk about the experiences and the challenges, and we talk about ways we can navigate it. I gave you one example with the young man that couldn't sleep well. We talked about ways we can navigate this challenge you're having. So they start to develop a bit more information about how to solve the problem that they're having. And the optimism starts to creep up again. You go from being pessimistic about the experience to optimistic because there's a plan of action. There's a route out of this challenge, or the valley of despair, as we call it. So we share that pre the challenges, let's say.
Yeah, I can imagine that model is really helpful in a tournament setting there, because the players come in with so much energy. They've got that uninformed optimism when they come into camp, and then you get mid-tournament, particularly after a loss, you realize, oh, other people are good at our sport as well. It's not just us. And you can go into the valley of despair, like you described there, that informed pessimism, like, oh, we might be losing here, or we might not get the outcome that we wanted. But if you manage them through that, you can get them into that kind of informed optimism that comes out the end of it, which is understanding yourself, understanding us as a team and where we fit in. And it must be a constant day-to-day adjustment of expectations versus reality. I wonder if you encounter that, Mark, with some of the clients you work with.
I think it links into so many elements. Remember that famous saying, train hard, fight easy? That was actually taken from a Russian general hundreds of years ago that retired undefeated, and translated, that's what it was. I think there's an element of that we can repair, but also it links into the critical thinking principles and neutral state. Neutral state being aware of what's happening in the moment, and then taking that as data and go, okay, well, that's what I am. So you're accepting that's what I am. What can I do now? What options have I got now, as opposed to hanging on to, oh, I'm not playing as well, or we're down, or the food's not what I expected, or I'm not getting this, I'm not starting as I expected. Is that okay? Let's plan as Alan says, but making sure it's real and making sure we hook back into it. So almost searching for moments, even in a warm up, and all of a sudden they're not as fired up starting the warm up. It's okay. Ball of three back into a peers picking it up and having a reset and a chat. If not, opportunity to step in. Okay, so this moment now, this is an opportunity to test our commitment to our goal. So what would excellence look like right now? Can we become that right now? Can you show me? Okay, show me now. Let's start again. And it's connecting all the time to the realism of life. I think so important. But as Alan said, if you let them know with texture and then keep hooking it back in, but back to that critical thinking and not just emotional thinking, too higher expectations, and we don't want to down expectations, but the reality of we can perform excellence as a combination. I think that's where the expectation can be adaptive, but also maintain the excitement, but saying actually it's about what I do in this moment.
Simon, so just I can add some more context there, a little bit around what we did as well as that change cycle. Like, we'd often have conversations around how can we get to, because it's one thing to say, let's accept what the reality is and make a plan of action and move on. That's the easy part. Like, to practically, to fulfill that and to actually go through a process of that becoming a reality and that becoming actionable. You know, we'd have plenty of moments where we'd say, okay, we're experiencing this. Now, what are we going to do? So I would ask them can you recall moments where you've had challenges before? Like, can you recall moments where you were feeling pressure? You were feeling discomfort? Can you recall these moments? Because you've had these experiences before. So it was about just like repackaging that moment and going, yeah, this is not new. I've been here before. It's a different context. It was a different experience, but I can relate to feeling this way. And then we would discuss as a group, like how you were feeling, thinking, and how you acted in those moments. And on reflection, what would you do differently now if you were faced with that experience again? Because that's what this is. It's another opportunity. It's not a threat. It's not a worry about failing. It's an opportunity for growth. And it's an opportunity to learn from past experiences. So we would try to join the dots back to previous experiences they had. And we would have these discussions, like we would literally sit as a group and share with each other challenges we've had in the past and what we did and what we would do differently now, because it's now is the moment we can do something different. So that was that we did stuff like that just to kind of action these things we would talk about. Bring them to life in ways that it wasn't just a conversation in a room and forgotten about when we walked out of the room.
And that fits into, Alan, that point of we're talking about self and reflection, but that's where we need to build the empathy. And okay, now when you see others that are looking a bit different than they usually are, understanding them and how can you have an effective impact with them in that moment with empathy, with understanding them. It's that getting to know each other, isn't it, through the struggles? Yeah,
you're absolutely right, Mark. And part of the meetings we'd have is, what did you notice about others? We would ask them, and then we would introduce another model to them that helped them manage pressure and help them manage difficult moments. This was all around tools we could use that we could pull out of our toolbox at any given moment, or us as coaches could remind them of the tool that they have available to them in this moment. Could be at halftime, could be pregame. It could be managing you're not sleeping and it's affecting how you're thinking and behaving. We would reflect. We would go back and say, well, don't forget that NEAT model that we went through. Or just remind me what the benefits of that were and how you can use that in this moment. But a lot of it was, Mark, because we were a team, including the staff. What were you noticing about your teammates in these difficult moments? What were you noticing about their behaviors? What changed? Is there anything you could have done differently? Because we will need that going forward. I would stand at the front and go, guys, I need you. I can't do this alone. I will need you to recognize when you think I'm off center here. I need recalibration. I'll talk about what works for me in a moment, but it was very much us as coaches displaying that, we're not all knowing, all powerful. We're not going to just lead this. We will support. It's a two-way street here. The support will go both ways. And we had a very mature group, by the way, guys, that were incredible with this.
You said NEAT model there. Can you double click on that just briefly?
Yeah. So the European Championship national teams, guys, performance, it doesn't matter. It's any level of performance. Pressure exists because you're on a public stage. You're up for judgment. You're up for critique. Coaches, staff, players, the nation, the sports. People would talk bad about British basketball in comparison to powerhouses in Europe. So as soon as you open the gates to this and you decide you put on that shirt, national team jersey, you're on show, you're going to feel pressure. And then if you're not winning, the pressure mounts. And then if you're not playing well, the pressure doubles, quadruples, magnifies, as you know. So we try to share. We share the model with the players. How can you, again, use a tool that might help you to understand pressure and therefore manage those feelings that you're having associated with pressure. So we use the model called NEAT, N-E-A-T, and the N stands for it's normal to feel threatened. This is normal. This feeling we're having. Let's normalize it. And let's look at it as a privilege in some ways, because you don't get this in your relaxed state or your leisure environment. So it's normal to feel under threat. It's normal to feel this pressure. The E stands for, it's, again, going back to the word normalizing, expect to respond with some sort of emotion. Expect to display something because you're human. So when you feel under pressure, you feel threatened, it's normal to feel that way. E, expect to respond with an emotion. And we're just saying to them, it's okay how you respond because you're human and that's you. Now we may need to work on the length of time that you're in that space, but it's normal to do it. The A is about acceptance. So accept your initial response. Just accept how you responded with that emotion. And in the T is where we pivot slightly. It's about, right, I've acknowledged that it's happened. Now I'm going to shift my mind and focus on the next most important thing that I should be focusing on. And that was just something we discussed. We gave scenarios. We played it out in practice one time as well. I would reference it on the game plan. I would reference it on my coaching plan for me in the games, but I'd also reference it with the team at halftime if I felt that they were feeling some sort of nervousness around the game. So quarterfinals, for example, we're winning at halftime. You can feel a bit of, anxiety in the room because it's like we're holding on to it. I don't want to let go. It was a real interesting feeling that I felt we were having. It was almost like we were up 3 instead of going, yeah, we've got this. It was like, oh, I don't want to let this slip away. Mm-hmm. And they started to hold on tighter. It was really interesting. I've not experienced that before. So I just said, is this a moment that the NEAT model we should discuss? And is this going to free any thoughts and feelings you're having at the moment? Because I feel like we feel a little bit, even though we're up, I'm getting a sense that there's a feeling of pressure in this room that we don't need to have. So we use it at different moments, Mark.
Great. I can imagine that applies to your teammates as well, and that maybe connects with Mark's model of the 3 A's. So it's normal to expect your teammates to feel threatened. You should expect them to respond emotionally, and sometimes their communication might not be as kind of kind or as open as you want it to be, especially in big moments. So just accept that, and then take care of the next moment, not judge them too much for that. That seems to connect to the 3 A's pretty well.
It's important to add a bit of texture onto what Alan's and you're sharing there, Simon, is that it's the speed of awareness of I'm just feeling this poor referee call. I'm feeling this now. They've just called against me. I don't agree with the referee. The speed of recognizing that and going, I'm still moving back into what's my best position right now. And that's that key element of saying, look, there's an element of acceptance, but the acceptance isn't, okay, well, it's okay. The acceptance is it's happening, but what's excellence for me right now? Okay, I'm in it right now. And it's that speed of recognition to change. And then over time, we should become, I'll use the word desensitized, but more robust in, yeah, no problem. I've had this before. I'm on it. I know what to do. I know if I do this, I'm at my best. And I've got reps of, I know when I think like this now, I'm feeling it bang, and also feeling it early. So I'm sensing it, and now I have the interventions that work for me, as opposed to I'm sensing it, but I'm doing nothing about it, then your negative spiral. Which may be back to your point, Simon, of the rule of 2 of peers are spotting it early with an athlete, and they know what to say or whisper in the ear or a hand touch to get them back on, or a word, because that's helping someone trigger back. Same as Alan has shared before at championships years ago, as a player reached out to him, coach, it's one of those moments, and all of a sudden it's the trigger set because they spotted it, there's permission, and then we're connecting.
Can I just share, Mark, I've used with this group, I showed them the picture, the model of your sliding scale of ownership.
Yeah.
And that became a huge topic of discussion in Camp 1. And I've got to give this group of players huge credit. They kept that alive right to the very end. And even now with some of their feedback, I'm getting random messages. I'm not provoking the messages. And the messages are just really a great signal for how safe they feel to actually tell me stuff and discuss stuff with the coaches. And they weren't, we tried to shift the dial, and I was very transparent, guys. Our whole purpose in this Camp 1, the very first camp, is to get you to understand the faster we can shift the dial from you being dependent on us, waiting for us to tell you what to do, to you being independent, self-sufficient, making decisions on your own, live, under pressure, and supporting each other. I said, the quicker we can shift that dial, that was my pitch. The quicker we can shift that dial, the quicker we can make improvements, we can grow, we can progress, and we can achieve our potential. And they literally locked onto it. They locked onto it. I showed, your model of tell, ask, discuss, challenge, allow, and then we have it sliced in half, and it's coach control up here to athlete control. They lived in that top right-hand corner, and I would join the dot here to how I experienced this tournament. This is one of my most enjoyable tournaments. This is one of my most enjoyable campaigns. And I can put it down to, we can call it the maturity of the group. We can call it there was no major egos. We can put it down to that. I'd put it down to this solely. The dial was shifted very quick from me having to tell, to them solving problems with each other, to taking responsibility, which came with accountability, to and from each other. And that dial just shifted really quick because they got it. They truly got it. Now, I've worked with this group previously, so I've had a leg up, let's say, in some capacity to actually, they were very clear how I wanted them to take ownership over what we were doing. They were clear on that previously. So I had a leg up with this group from previous years.
That's an important point you've made there, Alan, because what you're doing there, and if anyone's listening here, I think that this is a deciding factor when I hear coaches struggling with shifting, is you made it very explicit early on of look, and understanding the benefit and the why, if and when we do this, but then it's okay, but what does that look like for us? What would that look like in this session? What would that look like, getting ready for the warm-up when you start? So, and then we live it. And that point of living it every time is when they start going, oh, it's not words now. Okay. It's actually starting to happen. And I think that the final bit with that, Alan, so important is letting every athlete know, and managers and other support coaches, is none of us can be blind. What I mean by that is if you are thinking something, but you're not sharing it, then one of us is now blind. And the more we can eliminate the blindness as an organization, as a team, the easier it is to understand, the easiest us to understand each other and come up with a clarity of an agreement and an awareness that's going to help us move forward. Even if it feels a struggle or a challenge at the time, actually it's the blindness that will stop our progress.
And Alan, so you've introduced there some ideas around telling and asking. How did you bring that into a practical setting? So, for example, a timeout in the middle of one of these games, the European Championships, it must be tempting to revert back to telling the players what to do. And you record all your timeouts, you send most of them to me, and you do tell the players quite often, like you do a lot of telling in your timeouts, but it's not all telling, it's some asking as well. So how do you decide that balance in each timeout?
This is my definition of the master coach, Simon, and I'm not there yet. But you press the right button at the right time to give the players what they need in that moment, and that's critically important. And you're absolutely right. When I was listening to your question, I was about to intervene and go, well, actually, I do tell them. Mm-hmm. I absolutely do tell them. I don't ask questions all the time. Simon, first of all, there's some pre-work to be done here. First, let's say I need to go into that timeout without emotion, because why do we call timeouts in games? And when you go to the change room, what's the feeling at halftime? It depends on what's just happened. Have we gone on a 0-8 run where we've given up 8 points in 2 minutes and we've turned the ball over 3 times, and I call a timeout? I can go into that timeout with emotion, and it's just verbally vomiting on the players about describing what happened and venting and moaning. I don't think I do that anymore. Now, I'm human, so I definitely will fall into that space from time to time, but I probably pull myself out of it quicker than I used to. But I generally go into the timeout and I try to, and you've seen all my timeouts, I don't always get this right. I try to start with asking why I call a timeout or why the opposition call a timeout. That does a couple of things. One, it allows me my heart rate to go down. I can take another breath, let's say. I can take another breath. And by the way, as I'm walking to the timeouts, listening to Joe, the Boston Celtics head coach, on a podcast last year, I now intentionally take deep breaths. You'll see me walking the timeouts going like filling my lungs just so my heart rate just comes down a little bit more. And in that timeout, I feel more relaxed. It's amazing. Taking 2 or 3 deep breaths before I sit down in front of those guys has an amazing impact. But I generally start by asking the question, why I called the timeout? Why did the opposition call the timeout? Don't always get that right. But going back to telling, I have to make a judgment when I go into that timeout, what's going to benefit this group most? Or what are they feeling? Are they feeling pressure? Have I called a timeout because they look like they're not solving the problem that the opposition has given us? If that's what I've identified, I'm going to go in and we've got 60 seconds, and it's probably 40 seconds by the time they sit down and the referees are calling you back out. I'm telling them the solution. I'm going, guys, they're fronting the low post. Nedas, I want you to flash to the high post the minute you see them front. And Real, I want you to enter the ball to the high post if it's available. That's how we're going to solve this problem, guys. Is everybody clear? Remind me what we're doing before we go back out there. Real, what's your job? Nedas, what's your job? Marley, what's their job if they're not doing it?
Could you ask a question? And how often do you ask a question there? Could you ask, what do we do if our opponent is fronting the low post?
You can ask a question, of course, Mark, and I often do ask questions, but in the moment that I think, right, this is urgent, I'm just telling, and they're going back out because they want me to tell. Now, at the end of the day, if players are used to a coach coaching a certain way, or a series of coaches they've had who coach through a means of tell, that's what the player wants from you. This is the danger of this. But if the players don't know any different, and they're used to being told, and I come in and ask a question in a moment like this, it's real confusion for them. And I got to be very careful of this because with the national team, I don't coach these players throughout the year. I get them for 6 weeks. They're coming from other environments. They're coming from other experiences. So there's a bit of work to do before you get to this timeout. You need to understand their previous experiences, how they've been coached, and them understanding how you're going to coach. And like I said to you, I've had a leg up with this group because I've coached it 2 years ago. But 2 years ago, I had to introduce myself to this group. This is how I will coach you because this is how I think is the most effective way for you to coach. And I know this is my most effective way of coaching. This is the best way I can give you my insight, my intel, what I can do to help you. So yes, Mark, Simon, you can ask questions all you want, but there is moments where I don't ask a question. I literally see them struggling with this problem, and I just go straight to tell. And sometimes I'll say that to them, actually. I'll go, guys, I'm just going to cut right to the chase here. I'm going to tell you the solution. Because they may be waiting for a question, because that's generally the format we would have taken.
Now, there is some texture with that, isn't there, Alan? Because there's a difference between the team you're coming, as you said, you've got them for a short period of time. They've got the culture and the habits of all the clubs, which is quite different to if now taking on a team. You go, this is my league team. I've got you for at least a whole season. So let's start cultivating. So it's the understanding the difference, but also understanding that a timeout is the same as a match. We shouldn't be doing anything in a timeout or a match that we haven't first practiced under pressure and prepared in practice in a way where I now know when you're under stress, my judgment is where you are now in your development, this is appropriate right now, because this is what the data has shown me in practice under that testing. But also then you shared before Simon asked the question is, you ended where possible with a player last. So you may have said, right, we need to do this, and said to a player's name, right, coming in. And then that player last is making sure they're not shell-shocked and just nodding, making sure they've connected. So then you might go, okay, Jimmy, so what are you going to do here when this person comes out here or we go wide? And now Jimmy is confirming Jimmy is understood from your tell. So they're not just nodding like a boxer's being hit round the face and they walk out and it hasn't gone in. So that player last, in my opinion, is the non-negotiable, even under stress, where we go, look, we know how many digits of information you can take in. It's not many. So I need to tell now, we haven't got time. I can see you lost, but now I'm going to make sure the people of relevance, I'm going to target in a supportive way to make sure, have you understood that? What does that look like to you? What are you going to do back to the if? I think that's what it sounded like naturally you shared when you first answered that question, Alan.
Yeah, you're absolutely, well, Mark, if I don't engage them in the time during this moment, like key moments of the game, if I don't engage them and get data from them, I'm limited with the decisions I can make the rest of that game. So actually in those moments, and it includes stoppages of play, where it's not a timeout, you call over a player. If you watch the games back, I call over the players a lot. And you see me put the hand on the shoulder. I'm trying to get data from them. I want to know what's going on. Because with that information, it might shape some of my thoughts as to a tactical adjustment. Or even a player, like he needs to come out 2 minutes earlier than we planned. He's blowing hard there. He's struggling. And you get that in those moments of interaction. So if you don't engage the players, you somewhat limit yourself as to decisions that you can make, because they give good information, especially if you've worked on this in practice and if they have agency in the training sessions and the training camps where their voices and choices are valued. You get good stuff back from the players come game time, like really rich information if you ask good questions. And very often it's just like, right, what are you noticing? What's going on? Talk to me here. What do I need to know? And that's a great, Marley, what do I need to know? They got used to me saying, what do I need to know? It wasn't a strange question anymore. It was like, coach, like they're really pushing me to the left every time. They're taking us out of the entry on the right side of the floor. All right, no problem. Let's kick it ahead earlier. Let's reverse it earlier so we don't have to deal with the pressure in the front court. That's a real life example of an interaction we had, the two of us.
And it's back to again, Alan, what you're saying there is the point of you've got to develop in practice when a coach is asking them a question, they're really interested in their opinion of answer, not what does coach want to hear. That will take time in itself to go, no, it's not the learned answer. I'm really interested in what you're seeing or, your interpretation of the moment right now. But then it's making sure as a coach, we don't get into, well, they're not running fast enough. That's what's killing us. Guys, you need to run faster. Well, what's preventing them from running faster? No one wants to be lazy right now. So it could be actually, we are burnt out. I'm running as fast as I can, or I'm not sure where to go, so I'm not as committed in the choice of action of where to move. So there has to be that understanding, doesn't there?
So I eliminated that language very, very early on. We were playing a prep game in Hungary, and there was stuff being shouted out like let's go, do more, commit more. It was just catchphrases.
Yeah.
And after the game, I said, right, can we just debrief that game and talk about the language we're using and how what does it mean? Because I said, come on, let's go, do more. Can we stop with that? Because I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what it is. Do more of what? Let's, show up. Did you know that I'm struggling to think of them now because we just eliminated them. We said, right, if that's what you're going to say, don't say it. It doesn't help. So we talked about how communication needed to be actionable. Whatever you say is something that people have to act on. And, I delivered it in a frustrating tone. I was like, right, can we just stop this rubbish? Because I don't know what that means. I don't know what value it adds to us. I don't know what to do with it. I'm sure in the heat of the moment, players, if you're honest with yourselves, what does it actually mean to you in the heat of the moment? It's just another voice in your head. It's just more noise. It's not a signal to do
Alan,
anything.
Can I give you a real world example? And this was at international rugby. International is a player missed a kick on the pitch, a penalty kick for the points. And the coach sent the message on through the sponge man. And the message was, get it next time. And it's like the player's going, yeah, I deliberately missed that one. Thanks for that feedback, coach.
Yeah, now, was that it?
You want me to get it? Okay.
Yeah.
But if you take that approach, you have to stop and think more. And I think this is a good space for coaches, stop, think before you say it. And I still don't, guys, I put my hand up here first person to tell you, I still say stuff. When I listen to the timeout I send you, when I watch them back, I've got my hands over my face so often going, well, that was just a waste of everyone's time because that means nothing. And we're human. We have emotions. We're going to go there from time to time, but it's just recognizing that and trying to scale it back. So you're back to stimulus and response. And I find, especially in timeouts or in heated moments during the game, something happens. Actually, do you know what? Just take a breath. Don't say anything. Take a moment before you respond, because it's in that space where you can realign yourself to your values as a coach. And I know when I'm not coaching at my best, I know I'm very, very clear. I'm crystal clear. I know that the space there between the stimulus and the response, when it's small, when it's little, I don't coach at my best. When I wait, I'm able to digest what's happened. So the emotion takes time to drift away, and I can realign myself to how I want to coach. My goal as a coach, the journey I'm on, guys, I'm very clear. I want to be in that space where the gap is very little, they almost sit on top of each other, and I can still respond in the way I want to. But at the moment, I still need to take a breath sometimes. When something happens, I need to take a breath or just turn away and give myself more space between the stimulus and how I respond. But with your two help, I'm going to go public with this. With you two, by this time next year, I should be on top of that. There should be no space because you guys are going to help me nail that this next 12 months.
Well, you are human, Alan. So
this is true. This is true.
Some expectations on there. There's. I know we might hang on to this point of interaction, whether it's from the sideline on the timeout. But I think it's so important. Is obviously we know very popular now. There's people sitting on the fence of traditional, which I don't know what that is, and eco-dynamics, where we can't tell, but that's not true. You actually can, of that sliding scale. But it's understanding that if you're scanning well, if your state is good, if you're now looking at, okay, so where's the source of the issue that I'm seeing live? Where are the solutions? There may be more than one. And then the next question is, are my players on the court now with how long they've been on and the situation capable of the solutions that I now have in my head? Have they shown under pressure they can do them? If not, that's not a solution. Once we get to that point, if we're looking at players now aren't seeing a solution, our judgment is, okay, now I need to share that with you, but I'm going to make sure the people are connected in of relevance, but I need to mark that. So when it comes to practice, I'm spotting now there's areas of the game where certain players aren't understanding or seeing a solution. Now, I haven't got time in this timeout in a match to ask the questions of, the ARP, what are you seeing? What options are you identifying? But I need to loop that back, not just on video, but actually then put scenarios in to ensure that area is improved. Because what I don't want to be is to be the coach go, okay, I'm going to share that solution again and not think, oh, hang on a minute, how can I progress the players so I don't have to share that solution in timeout because they would have worked it out live. And I think that's a critical element that I think some coaches miss a little bit.
So question then, Mark, right? Like the challenge for any coach listening to this, and I'm clear on ways that I can get there, and there'll obviously be other ways. Like you said, there's no right one way, but it's been intentional about that way and being clear that it does add value. Like, how does a coach get to that space? What do you advise there for any listener? Because it's easy to say that's what happens, but again, building up to that is the challenge.
Well, don't forget, if we've got that challenge it phase in practice where we're putting them under real stress, I'm spinning my cap, I'm trying to find the weak links. I then spot the trends of capability. So I'm looking at, okay, now when I throw these situations at my team, I see they're reading the game and they're committing to the best choices within their present capability combination. So I should have an expectation of what my team is capable of. Understanding under high competition match, my capability is going to drop a little bit because they're better capability players, the pressure. So once I'm setting that, what I have to do as a coach is split in a match. That team is doing things at a level we can't practice. And there's a new adaptation that the players, if they get it, great, but they're not going to get it. Well, actually, I need to go in and tell that. And that's a note. But on the second time, there's elements that I'm seeing. No, we should know this. We should be able to see this live and make the adaptation. We're not. I need to tell now. But whether that's assistant coach or someone else just putting a little time on it, note this. So the coach doesn't have to remember anything. So then when you go back to the video, you've got those points of those note points. You can look at it back when you're not under pressure and go, okay, these are the times when the expectation was that the players would have seen this and would have had the solution and they're capable of. Okay, now I need to delve into why not and build on that. If there's elements that are going, well, that's something happened we've never prepared for, we've never been tested at that level of individual or team skill opposition, I'll park that because that's a nuance. We may not see that again in another 2-3 years. So let's not spend energy on that. But we need to spend energy on this.
Right.
Hey, just drawing towards a close here. Alan, I want to ask you a little bit about your intentions when you coach and how well you're able to stick to those intentions. So in our plan to review process, in the game card we use, you always write your intention for the game. So I want to read you out one of the intentions that you wrote, and you tell me to what extent you were able to stick to this. So this is the Croatia game. You wrote, breathe life. I can't even say it. Breathe life and belief into the players. use affirmations?
Yeah, I hold it up there because I've got it in front of me.
Okay.
As soon as you said it, I just had on the desk. Go ahead, Simon. What's the question?
So that's an easy thing to write in advance of a game when your heart rate is low and you're feeling calm. To what extent are you able to stick to that kind of intention during a game?
Yeah, so I'm just looking at my quick review on the back of this, and I scored myself quite low. It wasn't low. I scored. It was a percentage. It was about 40%. I scored myself. I didn't use any affirmations, and I like to use affirmations because, again, that's one way of breathing life and confidence into the players. Simon, I love your tenacity to pursue the offensive rebounds. I'm not talking about how many offensive rebounds you got. I'm talking about an innate trait you have of just a will and desire to tunnel vision, pursue the ball. I didn't use any affirmations when I watched the timeouts back. I didn't use any at all. So again, I didn't do well there. Breathing life and belief into the players. I thought I did a good job in the first half. Not so good job second half. So that's why I scored myself low. What I do, Si, is this card comes with me, goes into my pocket. I fold it over like this. It goes into my pocket. And every so often I take it out and have a look at it. The problem I have with this European Championship, the second page I spend too much time on. What tactic are we going to run based on what they're doing to us? And I didn't look back on my coaching, how I planned for my coaching, how I should think and act in this game enough. If I did, I would have used an affirmation. But that particular game, I recall I got caught up in the game, the flow of the game for pretty much all of it, and actually didn't refer back to how I planned I would coach. I don't think I coached bad in that game. I think I could have coached better. And if I had referred back to my game plan around how I was going to coach, I would have nailed that for sure.
Mark, anything you want to share? Any insights before we finish?
Well, I think just from what Alan said there, I think that even affirmations an example. I wonder if, Alan, you could share a list of things that you may write on that part of the sheet, just to help coaches when listen and go, oh, okay, so that's an element I can focus on that could have an influence within the athletes.
Sure. So first of all, I don't think it's commonly done, Mark. I've worked with a range of coaches down through the years. I had some wonderful coaching staff. I had a wonderful coaching staff this year. I think we should do a whole podcast episode on how to utilize the strengths of your extended coaching team the next time we talk. I think it'd be fascinating. I've got loads of great examples to share from this group. Mark, most coaches I know don't plan for how they're going to coach the game. They don't plan their state. They don't plan their intentions beyond the tactical game plan. And that's not about the coach, that's about the players. So what I generally write on this very often is, depending on the context of the game, a lot of it will be around how my behavior is going to influence the players and the staff in a positive way. So on this one, it was breathe life and belief into the players, because I know Croatia is a team that will medal, and they ended up getting silver medal. I know our players are going to feel more stress in that game than the previous game, which was against Bulgaria, because they know Croatia. They understand how good Croatia is. So my plan was to ensure that our guys felt confident and didn't lack any belief, or didn't let their confidence waver regardless of the score, regardless of the situation in that game. I was going to use affirmations to build that confidence, or to rebuild their confidence if it was needed. More to rebuild, actually, than to build it. But the first two parts of it, I think I did well. Focus on the next action, which I think I did. I didn't get hung up on previous mistakes in that game, I don't feel. And expect fatigue to be a factor. So this was about don't run them into the ground. If you see them getting tired, pull them early. It's a long game. Croatia's good. We've got to be fresh down the stretch if we're going to win this one. So it was about managing rotations in that game. So not a lot of coaches I know plan how you're going to approach. How do I need to think and act in this game? And this game will be different to the previous one and the next one, potentially because the opposition and the context is different. But it's mostly around my behaviors, Mark.
Importantly, though, everything you've said there is controllables. Irrelevant.
Absolutely.
Line. And I think that's a key element. And I mean, I'll give you an example of a team I worked with a few years ago. They were the lowest capability team in the league. So the reality is there may have been, if any of that whole squad, you put them in nearly any other team in the league, one or two of them may have played. That's so pretty much every match you're going into, if you play to your very best, you might get close to getting close to a result. But if you don't play, if you play 90% and the other team play 80%, they're probably going to win. So and imagine that whole season, not just a championship. So it's making sure that we're going, look, we can grow from this. We're never going to have a lazy game, but it's going to be mentally tough to keep to our peak capacity. But like you're saying there, what are the things that we can focus on and really connect into as a coach, but also as players, that can help us be in that moment, commit to that choice, go for it every time, irrelevant of what's coming back at you, irrelevant they've just swept past me, that it's kind of now, again, that relentless process. And they're the controllables that you shared there, to say, look, the reality is that a championship or a league is a moment in time. But that moment in time, when I finish that championship or when I finish that league, where have I grown in my software and hardware as a person and as a coach and as a manager, as a physio? Well, we should put markers on that, because that's going to help us start the next season, the next championship, at a higher level. But look at the exciting opportunity when we face challenges, because that's where we can really push. But there should be some objectivity on what I can control. How am I doing within those? And that's what you're doing within you there. But I would challenge everybody should be doing that.
Simon, as we wrap up, can I add one more piece to this puzzle? You guys won't know this, but you will know the first part. You did 2 episodes while I was
away. We know that bit, yeah.
Yes.
You know that bit. So now for the unknown.
None of them included you, by the way. We know that also.
Included me. However, and this was a good thing, and I'll explain why. Mark, everything you said there, I need, as a head coach, I need support to be in that space. I need some sort of support as a head coach to help me in that space. And no matter how much I empower or facilitate empowerment for my assistant coaches, it will never be to the level I need it, personally speaking. I think I can speak for most head coaches in that capacity, because it's difficult. The head coach's seat is so difficult. There's so many challenges. You have to deal with so much. There's so much. Everyone's looking to you for the answer. You're trying to manage yourself inside of it all. You guys recorded 2 episodes. You published 2 episodes. I would walk every morning at 7 a.m. by myself every single morning. And I listened to these 2 episodes repeatedly. And it kind of filled me up for who I wanted to be that week. And no, I didn't share that with you guys till now. But those 2 episodes really kind of revitalized who I needed to be for the players to be at their best. And, kind of remind the space I need to be in and how I want to be as a coach. So, the podcast can work. It can fill that gap for sure. But, it's everything you said there, Mark. It's not easy. And coaches need support in that space, and not just a one-off, constant top-ups is how I feel.
Well, can I sandwich this, Simon? Sandwich is, this is why you guys do what you do and I do what I do, is that external objective support, and saying, look, it's a minimum 6 months to a year of support, but having someone that's going to be honest with you, objective in the celebrations, but also in the challenge of the committing to things that you said you need to do, using all the principles we've been talking about, but use that in that relationship. I think more coaches and organizations that have coaches need to invest in those type of people, not the consultant that will just go, yeah, you're doing great. What would you like to talk about today? Which is more the counseling type mentoring, which I know is out there. So, but let me end with a challenge, Alan, just for every viewer. Did you like and comment on the podcast you listened to?
No, I didn't, Mark. I definitely didn't. I didn't comment.
Okay.
Well, on that note, let's wrap this up. We've covered a whole bunch of ground here, and there's a part 2. Surely we're going to do that quite soon as well, just to unpack in particular how you work together as a staff during the tournament. We didn't really touch on that, so let's do that as a part 2. So thanks for joining me, and thanks to everybody for listening.
Can I add, Simon, just for the listeners, for that part 2, please leave a question under here if it's relevant to the tournament Alan's been on, in a positive, selfish way. If there's a question you'd like us to discuss, leave it under here and we can use it in the next one.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.